Protesters at the COP29 Global Climate Conference have accused the host country, Azerbaijan, of greenwashing. Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg said that the petroleum-exporting nation is more concerned with securing oil and gas investments than with solving the crisis. But Baku says it was chosen to host a conference because of its initiatives in the green energy transition.
The world has to move away from oil and gas. But Azerbaijan has made clear it has no intention of changing its business model for the sake of the climate. 60% of government revenue come from fossil fuels, which are the main driver of the climate crisis.
Having oil and gas deposits is not our fault. It's a gift of the god.
The NGO Climate Action Tracker gives it the worst possible rating for climate protection, critically insufficient. Azerbaijan's emissions are set to rise by a further 20% in the coming years. See the red line. In purple, the country's own climate targets, a far cry from the emissions reduction Azerbaijan needs to aim for to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees, shown here in green. COP29 president and chief negotiator is Mukhtar Babayev, Azerbaijan's Minister for Ecology and Natural Resources and former official of the state oil company. Analysts are concerned.
Climate negotiations only work if you have a very strong and very credible and very trustworthy presidency. Azerbaijan is not that. It's a fossil fuel country. It's an autocrat country. Human rights are difficult. And they are displaying themselves better than they really are.
Meanwhile, the human rights situation in the Caucasus country is disastrous, say experts. Numerous political prisoners are in jail, where many are being tortured, say human rights organizations. Critics say they have been systematically silenced, particularly in the run-up to the climate conference. Among them, Bashir Süleymanli from the Azerbaijan NGO Climate of Justice Initiative. Forming a coalition, we wanted to draw attention to these problems, highlighting the need in the country for an environment where people can express their opinions, voice their grievances, raise issues and comfortably express themselves. Naturally, before we could achieve this, it was stopped. People were arrested. Reporters Without Borders press freedom ranking also paints a grim picture. Azerbaijan takes place 164 out of 180 countries. The petrostate has also been rated as one of the most corrupt in the world, according to a Transparency International report. And then there's the conflict with neighboring Armenia. Just last year, Azerbaijan took over the region of Nagorno-Karabakh, which led to more than 100,000 Armenians fleeing. The outcome of the climate summit does not depend solely on the host country. To prevent devastating floods, as seen recently in Spain and Brazil, and support countries hit by climate catastrophes is the responsibility of high-emitting nations, namely industrialized Western countries, as well as China and oil-rich Gulf states.
Well, for more on this climate conference, we can talk now to Joyeeta Gupta. She's a professor of environment and development in the Global South at the Amsterdam Institute for Social Science Research. Thanks for being with us. Joyeeta, the analyst in our report suggests that climate negotiations cannot succeed if the summit presidency is in the hands of an autocratic state that's almost wholly dependent on fossil fuels. Do you agree?
It's very unpredictable. You never know when a COP will succeed and when it will fail, and it all depends on the dynamics within the country and within the organization. I remember one of the COPs was in the Netherlands, and we were so sure it would succeed, and it failed because of the way in which the dynamics worked. The COP Copenhagen failed. So it's a little unpredictable when it will work and when it won't. But having said that, the question is whether the Azerbaijan top really wants to phase out fossil fuel, and everything shows us that they don't want to do that. So my gut feeling is that they will not lead the way.
Okay, a big focus at this conference is what to do with emerging countries that are trying to transition away from fossil fuels. What can be done to help them, in your opinion?
So, the more than 80% of the remaining fossil fuel is in the developing world. So basically, there are two challenges. The first challenge is not using fossil fuel and extracting virgin fossil fuel from the ground. And the second challenge is, what do we do with the plants that have just been built and therefore have a lifetime of about 80 or 90 years? And most of these plants were built based on investments that took into account a long-term period. So if you close those plants down, these countries and investors will go bankrupt because they have to pay back the investors. So there are two types of problems over here in terms of the finance. And of course, then there is the problem of the miners and the people employed by the mining sector and the fossil fuel sector. And you have a large number there. So you're really talking about using climate finance to phase out the extraction process. You're talking about climate finance not to use the fossil fuel that is still there but not yet extracted. And you're talking about climate finance to ensure that people employed in the sector will support governments to change the sector. And this is very, very problematic. And part of the problem has been, of course, that our rich countries in the West, we took too long to phase out. And in fact, we have not yet phased out our own fossil fuel. So the message it sends to many of the countries outside the Annex 1 countries is, well, since we are still drilling, baby drilling, therefore they can also drill, baby drill. And that is a really problematic situation that we are currently in. It's very difficult to blame the emerging economies when our own European and American states are still continuing to use fossil fuel.
Joyeeta, thank you very much. That was Joyeeta Gupta in Amsterdam. Excuse me.
Thank you.